Good morning, Jacksonville. I'm Abby Maloney, President and CEO of Capital Analytics. Welcome to the launch of our inaugural Invest Jacksonville 2022 report, an in-depth analysis of what makes the region tick, where are the opportunities, and what challenges lie ahead. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. Throughout our conversations with leading voices from both the private and public sectors over the past year, many of whom are joining us here today, we learned the essence of what makes the Jacksonville region a desirable place to work, live, and play. It is among the fastest growing regions in the country, having gained particular attention in the aftermath of the pandemic, with an unemployment rate that is below the state and national averages. It also offers 4 of the top 20 school districts in Florida. On the economic side of the ledger, while tourism remains a key economic driver, diversity is the name of the game. Healthcare is now a leading employer, and one of our panels today will look at the future of the sector. Forbes has noted the region as one of the fastest growing for high-tech jobs, and Mayor Lenny Curry, today's keynote speaker, told Invest that he expects Jacksonville to be a world leader in fintech in the next 5 to 10 years. Among the region's strongest attractors, particularly to the millennial generation that is increasingly calling Jacksonville home, are affordability and a high quality of life, as is the education sector that is consistently developing a top-notch and inviolable talent pipeline, a fact that has never been more important as it is in today's labor challenge world. Economically, the region overall suffered the consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic, just like everywhere else, but it took the necessary steps early on and is emerging in a position of strength. Of course, there are also challenges that need to be addressed. We all know very clearly now that diversity, equity, and inclusion are integral components for any company or organization, and many are now moving to ensure that they're inside the issue and not on the outside looking in. Other challenges include disrupted supply chains, with one result being inflation that remains a threat nationwide. Workforce development will be a key issue moving forward, as will the development of more affordable housing as prices continue to tick up despite the area's comparative affordability. As the region continues to grow, a key challenge that will be to ensure the growth is smart and sustainable. The real estate and financial sectors will have a key role in that regard, which our first panel will be tackling in detail. Overall, when we look at the picture of Greater Jacksonville, what we see is a great deal of optimism. At this time of change, as we merge into a post-COVID economy, it's particularly important to look ahead, leaning on the lessons learned over the past 2 years. At Capital Analytics, like so many other businesses, we saw the pandemic as an opportunity to change things up. Business intelligence is now more vital than ever, whether it's in print, digital, or virtual conferences like this. First, we expanded our talented staff at Capital Analytics and have entered into 11 new markets in this post-pandemic climate: Jacksonville, Minneapolis-St. Paul, Pittsburgh, Nashville, Raleigh-Durham, San Antonio, Dallas-Fort Worth, Cincinnati, and North and Central Jersey, bringing our economic reporting library to just under 20 metro areas. Next, our Invest Insights video platform has exploded. We brought our network of high-level CEOs in front of the camera to share with our audience their views on and advice on everything from creativity in light of the pandemic, cryptocurrencies and NFTs' long-term effects on banking norms, the Great Resignation and retaining and attracting talent, and so much more. Season 5 just wrapped, so stay tuned for the rollout. And lastly, we expanded our video platform to a podcast so that our readers and viewers can listen to this informative content on the go. In all of our discussions with hundreds of business and political leaders over the past year, a common thread is how far we've come in such a short amount of time, how advances that were expected to take years have happened in months. Today, Jacksonville stands as a leading example of what it takes to not only grow stronger, but to grow better. We have quite a lineup for you today. However, before our discussions begin, I'd like to take a brief moment and thank the sponsors of today's events. Our gold sponsors, Flagler Health, Franklin Street, and Medical Life Holdings, and our honored partners, the Jacksonville Chamber of Commerce, the St. Johns County Chamber of Commerce, and the Chamber at Nassau County. Thank you. It is with your support that we can continue to bring high-level speakers and content to Greater Jacksonville. I would also like to take a moment and thank the team that put together this inaugural report. Jerica DuBois and Robin Mangrum, well done on this inaugural event. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our keynote address today, Mayor of Jacksonville, Lenny Curry. Mayor Curry, please turn on your video and your audio. You hear
Good
us okay?
morning.
Good morning. Thank you for being here. I'll toss it over to you.
Yeah, it's good to be with you. First of all, I'd like to say pardon the casual attire. I'm not at a golf tournament. I'm not at the Masters. I had surgery on my arm this week, and these are the only shirts that will fit over this big cast. So again, pardon the casual attire. I want to thank Abby Malone and the team at Capital Analytics for the opportunity to speak to you this morning. I'm here today to declare that Jacksonville is on a roll. We are a city that's blessed with a vibrant and engaged business community, and our success in recent years was accomplished in no small part because of the leadership and participation from many of those listening today. Jacksonville has seen tremendous economic growth in recent years, and we're committed to keeping this momentum going. My team and I continue to work collaboratively with state and local business community to bring more jobs, investments, and economic opportunities to our region. Today, I'm pleased to highlight these efforts and some of the successes we've exhibited throughout our great city and throughout Northeast Florida. But first, I'd like to provide some context. Prior to my taking office, the city of Jacksonville was facing severe debt and crumbling infrastructure. While pension reform helped our financial situation tremendously, we were still facing a backlog of needed infrastructure projects throughout the community that were previously neglected. To put it simply, our citizens were not getting the investments and services they deserve. To address that, last year, City Council approved My Jobs for Jax plan. In partnership with the Jacksonville Transportation Authority, I introduced this plan to create thousands of jobs, enhance our quality of life for our citizens, and improve economic outlooks for our neighborhoods. In fact, Jobs for Jax is projected to raise nearly $1 billion over the next 30 years. These funds will pay for transportation infrastructure improvements throughout the community and free up millions of dollars for other priorities outlined in the city's capital improvement plan. Investments improving transportation infrastructure and improving neighborhood conditions are investments in economic development. For too long, we've neglected to properly invest in these needs. And when the needs of the neighborhood are not met, the people and businesses that live there cannot thrive. My team and I have worked with my colleagues in City Council to allocate these dollars toward the septic tank phase-outs that so many neighborhoods were promised decades ago. It is past time our city government made true on those promises and ensured the success of our neighborhoods, our citizens, and our businesses. Adding to the need for investments, Jacksonville's population continues to grow steadily at a rate of about 1.5% a year. My administration has seen this potential and are committed to creating an attractive place for professional talent of all ages. Recently, Business Journal ranked Jacksonville in the top 20 cities for strongest job recovery, and we were ranked the #3 city for job seekers by MoneyGeek. In addition to growing business opportunities, Jacksonville's universities are exploding. Just last month, Jacksonville University, in partnership with my administration, announced a new law school. This will be the first new law school in over 20 years, filling a major gap in Jacksonville's current educational resources. In the past several years, we have started to see our efforts pay off. Recently, there have been major investments from both private and public actors in Jacksonville's neighborhoods and its businesses. We continue to burnish our global reputation as a leader in the logistics, finance, and medical industries. Jacksonville boasts world-class ports, interstates, and transportation networks. And we continue to grow with the opening of areas like Cecil Commerce Center, who have the unique capacity to accommodate incredible rates of business growth. Household names like FedEx, Amazon, Wayfair, Northrop Grumman, Bridgestone, and others have all invested in the Cecil Center, resulting in about 7,000 jobs. Jacksonville has also exploded in the finance and fintech industries with investments in headquarters by major global players like FIS, Nimbus, Deutsche Bank, and most recently, Dun & Bradstreet. We remain on the cutting edge of the medical field. Currently, Jacksonville is home to numerous nationally renowned medical facilities, including proton therapy institutes, pediatric care facilities, and cancer treatment centers. Jacksonville is the only city with both a Mayo Clinic and an MD Anderson Cancer Clinic. We're also quickly becoming a hub for international business and investment, including expansions by companies from across the globe. Our partners at the Jax Chamber, Visit Jacksonville, and Jaxport have all worked tirelessly to transform Jacksonville into an attractive site for new investments. Currently, Jaxport's harbor deepening project is under budget and anticipated to be completed this June, 3 years ahead of its original schedule. The project enables Jaxport to accommodate larger container ships coming to Jacksonville from destinations all around the world. Deepening creates or projects 15,000 protects 15,000 area jobs and has attracted $100 million in private investment from SSA Marine, one of the world's leading terminal operators. The projects my administration have worked on will directly create a projected 2,600 new jobs and $650 million of new direct private capital investment. Over 100 million of this private investment can be attributed to companies doing business internationally. I have often said you can't be a suburb of nowhere. Strong investments in our suburbs must be matched by strong investments in our downtown. From day one, my administration has been committed to changing Jacksonville's skyline. We've worked tirelessly with our partners at Downtown Jacksonville, the Downtown Investment Authority, and the Jax Chamber to transform our downtown into a premier center of culture and commerce. Just in the last few years, we've already seen tremendous growth. Massive names like Vistar and FIS have invested millions of dollars in their downtown campuses. Local businesses and restaurants have helped turn downtown into a hub of good food, retail, and entertainment. A few weekends ago, we saw the arrival of the future Jax Naval Museum, the USS Orlick, which will remain temporarily docked along the North Bank Riverwalk until its opening this summer. The Fire Museum has also been returned to its original location and will be reopening to the public later this year. The demolition of eyesores like the Berkman II have freed up massive amounts of waterfront property for investment and development. My administration and our many partners remain committed to fostering this growth and shaping Jacksonville and our downtown into a premier destination. I would like to close with this. Jacksonville is special. We have a unique combination of pristine natural attractions, an extensive park system, career and educational advancement opportunities, and a friendly business climate. My administration is committed to seeing Jacksonville meet its potential and will continue to work towards creating a beacon for people and businesses from all over the world. Thank you.
Morning, everyone. Thank you, Mayor Curry, for opening our event today. We appreciate all the support you've given to this inaugural edition, and thank you for setting the tone on an exciting and forward-looking series of panels we have for you all today. While I wish we were gathered together in person, it is my pleasure to be here with you virtually. For those who do not know me, I'm Jack Miller, and I'm the Regional Director at Capital Analytics, overseeing the South region. I would like to add my thanks also to everyone who contributed to this year's report, the inaugural edition of Invest Jacksonville. We're grateful for the wonderful relationships we've developed in the market. I was personally impressed and enthused by the warmth and openness with which our team was met. We received so much support in producing the publication from local executives who are excited to meet and share the amazing story of Jacksonville's growth. The state of Florida is booming, and Jacksonville is attracting businesses and people like never before. Metro Jacksonville offers a business-friendly environment, a favorable tax environment, great weather, excellent geographic location, but most of all, Jacksonville's most precious asset is its people. From corporate relocations and expansions to historic industry growth, Jacksonville is on the world stage now more than ever, and for more reasons than ever before. Today we're conducting 2 polls during the event to get your thoughts on current things happening in Jacksonville and in the world of business. The first of these will pop up on your screen now, so go ahead and answer the question, aside from increasing revenues and profits, what is the top priority for your organization in 2022? We have a great lineup for you today, with 2 panel discussions, so stay tuned throughout. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce our first panel, Growing Responsibly, the role real estate and finance play in smart growth for Jacksonville. Moderating the panel is Brian Parks, Regional President at Ameris Bank. Brian, if you could, as soon as you come in, if you could turn on your camera and unmute yourself. Hi, Brian.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. It's great having you here today. Thank you for being with us. I'm going to hand it over to you to introduce the panelists and start the discussion.
Perfect. Thank you. Let me just situate it here. Yeah, so I think we've got everybody on. I'm going to jump right in. So the panelists we have today is a great group. We've got Laura Gonzalez, the Regional Managing Director for Franklin Street. We've got Chris Tanner, a partner in McGuire Woods, and Chad Meadows, Chief Operating Officer at ViStar Credit Union. All right, so we're going to jump right in with some Q&A. We've got a couple of questions for the whole group, so whoever wants to take it would be great. And then we'll have some specific questions for the individuals on the panel. So for anybody that wants to jump in, first question is, how would you characterize Jacksonville's approach to growth over the last few years, and what do you really see as currently the most pressing challenges toward that growth? Who wants to take that?
Take it.
Chris.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. I'll take a shot at that. In terms of the approach to growth, I view Jacksonville as sort of an amalgamation of Jacksonville proper and Duval County, and then 3 surrounding counties. There might be more, but I'm not very good at geography, but we'll go with those 4. Jacksonville, Duval County, in terms of their approach, I'd say the city is very well organized with respect to growth in general. Maybe playing a little bit of catch up because of the influx of folks in the past year, which I don't think anyone expected. But the city's always had a forward-looking approach since I've been here 22 years. It dates back to the Better Jacksonville plan, currently to Mayor Curry's administration in terms of redeveloping educational facilities and rehabbing them, all intended to sort of to address the growth that the city is experiencing. And they've also focused a lot of efforts downtown, which we'll likely talk about later, which is really helping revitalize downtown, making it a vibrant center of culture and business. In terms of the other counties, St. Johns County to the south, they've been inundated with growth for as long as I can remember. Folks have been moving there for a variety of reasons, and they've been doing with it as best they can. I think they've now got a pretty good handle on the influx of growth. For example, they instituted a 1% sales tax to help pay for the continued infrastructure needs in that area. And they're also getting close to built out. So, they've got a pretty good approach and have been planning for many years in terms of how to administer and deal with it. Clay County, which has undeveloped portions of it, the growth is going there and the county has realized that. So I describe them as sort of coming to grips with the current growth and future growth. And lastly, Nassau County to the north, I think they're going to be sort of forced to confront growth. They've historically been not as growth oriented, but the wildlife development, other developments up there are doing very well, and growth is definitely coming. In terms of the most pressing challenges, I think they're common to all these areas. How do you plan, pay, and provide for infrastructure such as roads, bridges, and other transportation needs, public safety, parks, libraries, and schools? In addition, how do you staff these schools? For example, I think St. Johns County opens a new school every year. You need teachers and administrative staff to staff it, as well as the businesses that Mayor Curry mentioned keep moving to Jacksonville. You need an educated workforce to staff those businesses and to help local businesses continue to grow. So I'll turn it back to you, Brian.
No, good insights, Chris. anything, Chad or Laura, you want to add to that before we kind of move on to something a little more specific?
Yeah, I would say that, I mean, you heard what Mayor Curry said, and I think the city of Jacksonville is focused and aggressive in their growth and what they want to do for downtown. And I think you've seen that play out over the last couple of years. He mentioned a lot of things that are underway and continuing to move forward, but you just look at some of the pressing needs. And I think one of the things we all know is that Jacksonville is one of the hottest housing markets in the country, which is a leading indicator to people moving here and the growth, and not only moving from out of state, but in state, and moving up from the south and from the west. But one of the big things that we're seeing is creating a vibrant downtown takes time and energy. And it also takes the ability to develop good talent and attracting a talented workforce. And so one of the things that you're starting to see, and it's how do we bring people downtown, whether it's to live, work, or play, and you're starting to see that play out, whether it's through the work that the DIA is doing on their focused approach to finding new buildings and new individuals that want to come down here, the downtown vision, and putting on events like the Jack's River Jams. But that's a big thing that I think you have to see as we're growing, is how do you bring people down and now showcase what Jacksonville is all about. And one of the things that we've done is obviously move our headquarters down here. We took really a whole city block, renovated over 400,000 square feet of office space. And we've brought restaurants downtown. We brought Bread and Board, Bread and Burger, Australia Cucina. And we're adding more with the addition of the Forsyth parking garage, where we're going to have the Jacksonville Children's Chorus. But our goal is to help bring those people downtown to see what's going on and to feel the energy and the excitement. And that's really important, because as people see that, they'll want to be part of it. So.
Perfect. Thanks, Chad. Let's go to another question here, a little more specific. And Laura, since you haven't talked, maybe you could kick us off with this one. But what kind of projects or business activities are currently keeping your organization busy during this point in the economic cycle? And how does this reflect or highlight the Jacksonville region's continued growth and development?
Yes, absolutely. Well, it's definitely known now that Jacksonville is no longer a secret. We're getting calls from all over the place, people as far as LA, other countries, definitely the Northeast and the Midwest, has expressed a lot of interest in Jacksonville. So we're actually very busy with all the different product types. Multifamily and industrial have definitely led the way and been some areas of, definite growth and interest from people that are both local as well as from out of town. But we are getting requests for office, for retail, for senior housing, you name it. And it's coming from both the local developers and investors, as well as those coming from out of town. And a lot of the reasons that Mayor Curry and Abby mentioned are what's driving people to come here. Is we've got available land, we have, great workforce, we have, prices that are still affordable compared to other markets. And then we definitely have the city with a consolidated government that makes those approval processes so much easier. And so that's definitely motivating a lot of people to, come make Jacksonville their home for their business or for themselves personally.
Agreed. Yeah, good insight there. Along those same lines, for the group, how's creativity and innovation as it relates to growth become a key topic of conversation for your organization, as a number of industries across the spectrum in Jacksonville are faced with increasing competition, disruption, and consolidation? We heard a little bit of that from Chad with what they're doing with some investments in downtown, but anybody want to jump in on that one?
I can just talk a little bit about what we're doing. I mean, our focus is growth, and really it's growth to gain economies of scale, which is critical to our long-term success. And I know a lot of the success of a lot of organizations, and it enables us to bring an increasingly more complex technology to not only our organization, but to our members and those around us, but also bringing highly skilled, talented jobs in to meet the needs of our members. But also we have these great universities locally, right? And those individuals are looking for jobs. And so it gives us an opportunity to tap into the resource we have with all the incredible universities we have in this area. And so we're pursuing partnerships and mergers well beyond just Jacksonville, with the focus of being deeply committed to our headquarters. So while we're saying that, we've got a big opportunity up in Georgia. What that means to Jacksonville is bringing hundreds, if not thousands, of more jobs to our headquarters in Jacksonville, which is bringing more money to the pockets of employees down here and more spending for the local small businesses. So in other words, our reach is, while it's well beyond Jacksonville, it's really focused on elevating the impact and influence of Jacksonville within the southeastern U.S.
Yeah, good feedback. And as it relates to the same question, sort of around creativity and innovation with some of the challenges that you guys have talked about, any other thoughts from Chris or Laura around how the creativity and innovation is part of the growth for Jacksonville?
I could address that from the legal perspective. My law firm has other offices, and we're doing this sort of broad-based across our entire platform throughout the country. But we really focused on using technology in our business growth, artificial intelligence, as well as restructuring the way traditional large law firms are organized. We're organized into what we call industry groups. Typically, a law firm is organized by department: real estate and land use, corporate, commercial litigation, environmental. And we have cross-disciplinary industry groups that deal with everything from healthcare, private equity, real estate capital markets, data privacy, affordable housing. And you will have, in that structure, you will have attorneys from various disciplines who are familiar and have expertise in that industry. So affordable housing will be folks who are familiar with the regulatory scheme, both federal and state. You'll have finance, debt and equity attorneys. People can handle the tax credit piece, and then a whole host of different items. If you're in retail, for example, you have intellectual property attorneys, as well as real estate, as well as corporate attorneys. So that structure, clients have really appreciated that because they can get a variety of services sort of addressed in sort of one-stop shopping, so to speak, but they're comfortable with the expertise because we focused on it. And second is AI, artificial intelligence. We just continue to integrate that into our daily workspace to address sort of the growth, right? We have AI can help you scan through thousands, if not millions of pages of documents and look for concepts and words that are pertinent to the issue at hand. One big example is commercial litigation. We have a big document dump. Folks have, used to take individual attorneys hours and hours to scroll through that. AI can do that for you in a fraction of the time. And on the transactional side of the ledger, which is my area, we have AI that helps us with contract formulation. It'll scan your contracts for internal inconsistencies, and these are definitions. And as an individual attorney, you just have to read through an 80, 90-page document all over again to make sure things are consistent. And now AI will help you do that in a much greater period of time. So that's general, but that also that applies to our work here in Jacksonville as well as around the country. So get back to you, Brian.
Yeah, fascinating when you think about sort of industry specialty, because I think that really resonates with clients, especially given what you guys do. So I love that.
Thank you,
Laura.
On the real estate side, and we're seeing the same thing. That it's technology has really been the game changer for us, and a lot of that happened during the pandemic. That people were not able to travel to come to Jacksonville to see the sites or other locations throughout the country. And so, the real estate community figured out ways to be able to show things via droid videos, or whether it was virtual tours that could be taken, and a lot of other ways to showcase properties of all different property types for people who were able to view them without having to physically go there. Obviously, now that we're able to travel again, people still like to come before they make a final purchase, but it definitely helps with their initial review of limiting the number of places they need to go and see, and just taking advantage of that technology and all the different tools that are out there today to showcase the properties.
If you look back 2 years ago, right, none of us knew what Zoom was, but now we're all proficient at that, given what we all went through. So I do think it sort of speeds up the process sometimes. Laura, since you were last talking, I'll go with a specific question for you, and then we'll go back to Chris and then to Chad. So Laura, with the exceptional growth that this region and markets experienced, especially over the last few years, do you really believe we're in a sustainable position as it relates to growth of the commercial real estate in Jacksonville? And how can the region strategically plan now to maintain this growth for the future?
Absolutely. So as we all know, real estate comes in cycles. So it will come back down at some point, and then it's going to go back up. So I wish I had the crystal ball to know exactly when. But what is unique to today is definitely the population growth. That we are not watching the real estate numbers increase just due to investors that are flipping and buying multiple units. This is real population growth that's prompting people to move here. And so the growth will continue as long as we continue to have people that are moving here and that are investing their dollars from other markets, excuse me, into our community. We are definitely going to see the opportunity for additional growth. And we just need to continue to watch to be sure that the rents that, are able to be offered are going to be sustainable. And for the people that are moving in today, they're coming in with a lot of dollars from other places. And so our rents are relatively affordable, but there is obviously the concern for continuing to get businesses to come here. We need to have affordable housing and places for the employees to live that will allow them to continue to attract the talent that's needed. So that's one area that I think that we definitely need to monitor to be able to be prepared for growth. The infrastructure that Mayor Curry talked about is also key, that as we have all of these new people moving here, we need to be sure that our roads are set up to handle it and that our government continues to be supportive of the growth and offer incentives and different programs that are needed to attract the companies that want to come here. But we've got still a lot of available land and a lot of areas for more density that can happen. We just need to be smart about that growth.
Yeah, agreed. And I do think affordable housing is one of the challenges that we're really facing these days. All right, Chris, you touched on this a minute ago with some of the things that you guys are doing with AI and the ability to move a little faster and get transactions closed. But in your experience, representing institutional lenders, corporate borrowers, and all kinds of real estate transactions and really other, asset-backed transactions, how have you seen, or have you seen a shift in how these deals are now being structured to account for the rapid growth?
Yeah, thanks, Brian. I see sort of coming at it from a slightly different angle and then addressing the structure. I mean, first off, Laura touched on this, is the variety of asset classes that you're seeing industry focus on. I mean, multifamily housing is hot. It has been hot since I can remember, and it's just getting hotter because of the demographic shifts. Storage facilities are hot. I think those are both tied to residential growth. Warehouse and distribution facilities are hot due to the growth in retail and delivery and certain retail sectors. There's also significant push in the affordable housing sector, as we folks have discussed earlier, and the need to develop and finance those projects. So in terms of asset classes, those are the ones that keep popping up over and over again and have the most demand for legal services. And again, that grows out of the demographic shift and residential growth in large measure. Another change in terms of pure loan structure, and this might be a little too granular for our audience, but I'm a lawyer, so it's fun to talk about stuff like this. We're seeing more and more borrowers structure their transactions. The borrowing entity is what's called a Delaware Statutory Trust. And that's a business trust, and it permits the borrowers to sell equity interests in that trust to individual investors. And they do it for as little as a $100,000 investment. What this does is you may have, for example, a $90 million apartment complex, right? And the average investor probably can't afford to buy a piece of that. But Delaware Statutory Trust, you can buy a fractional interest of that and receive a fractional return on the profit. And that's seen that in a lot of income producing storage facilities, multifamily housing for sure, where you have rental income being thrown off. And what that does, the management is all handled by the trust. So the investors don't have anything to do with the management or the liabilities. They just collect their check. And that is really, I'm seeing that more and more. And it's complex from a legal perspective. You need to understand the entity. Florida has some fun laws where they pretend they don't recognize Delaware Statutory Trust, but if you do certain things, they will. And you just have to have legal expertise to structure it. But once you do, it's a very flexible entity for the owners. And so, and lenders have figured out how to loan to a Delaware Statutory Trust and feel secure that they're going to get their share of the income stream and get their loan repaid and their asset security for their loan. So that's one comment on structure, and I'll send it back to you, Brian.
That's pretty interesting. Are there any any significant sort of regulatory requirements around that? I was just curious about, you know, is it viewed like by the SEC or anything along those lines, or is it kind of out of that scope?
The Delaware Statute Trust, the reason it became popular is there was an IRS revenue ruling some years ago that listed like 8 or 9 criteria that if you complied with, you would get favorable tax treatment. Before that, it was an open issue. And so folks would use what are called tenant in common deals, where you would literally buy 1/7 of an apartment building with 6 other investors. Those were very cumbersome and unwieldy to deal with. You would set up a management facility. And this, from that perspective, managing it and investing in it is much simpler. So what really prompted that was just the IRS tax ruling, the revenue ruling from, yeah.
All right, very good. Chad, for you, close to my heart as well, but one of the key missions of financial institutions is to serve as a pillar for their communities. You've touched on some of this already, but in an effort to ensure that existing communities benefit from Jacksonville's growth, what long-standing or emerging problems should get greater attention? I mean, we touched a little bit on affordable housing. I think that's one, but you know, greater attention, collaboration, partnership, and what role do you really think financial institutions play in helping find these solutions?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And just the background on us. So we were established in 1952 on NAS-based Jacks. So by 12 people with $60. And so we were born here, we're rooted here, we're committed here. And advice, our core value is leading by example. And so to that end, we're committed to addressing existing issues like creating more jobs, as Mayor Curry said, bolstering tourism downtown. And one of the big ones is identifying areas of opportunities to help underserved communities. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. And now that we're over 12 billion in assets, we've got over 2,300 employees. We live by our purpose of leading by example, by doing good and giving back to the neighborhoods in Jacksonville. And so we're collaborating with community partners to make sure Jacksonville continues to grow in ways that benefit the community needs and also help grow the city of Jacksonville. So one of the things Mayor Curry said was the USS Orlick. We worked with Jacksonville Naval Museum, but really bringing a world-class museum to the downtown destination. The other thing we're doing is the National POW and MIA Memorial Museum and helping fund that project. But two things that are really at the heart of who we are as Jacksonville with the military. I think that's important that we continue to keep that. Some of the other things when we start talking about the underserved communities, but Lift Jacks and what it's doing for providing opportunities for small business and homeowners in downtown Jacksonville, particularly in the east side. They're transforming Deb's store, which was closed quite a while ago and is starting to reopen, but looking at creating a really nonprofit grocery store that does job training, on-the-site training, and providing financial counseling. And so you look at some of those things along with the Emerald Trail and what it's bringing to those communities, but bringing an outdoor destination that will really encompass I think it's about 30 miles of trails, greenways, and parks in the urban core that are linked to 14 historic neighborhoods to downtown. And again, it's revitalizing the downtown to bring it to where people want to come. Then you got the Cathedral District that's doing urban revival in the downtown Jacksonville, which is about 36 blocks anchored by 5 historic churches that will feature businesses, residential housing, neighborhood schools, public art. And then the landing. I think everyone's excited for the landing and what it's going to mean. I know right now they're warming up for the Jacks River Jam. So if you can hear them beating their drums and playing their guitars behind me, I apologize. But that brings a lot of just energy to the area and it brings people down here to see what's going on. And then the work that the city of Jacksonville and what Mayor Curry is doing on the youth work and working hand in hand with him and training and developing the next generation of leaders and providing financial wellness and education and building a talent pipeline for everything that's coming. It's coming and it's coming aggressive. And Chris said, you've got technology that's changing the game, whether it's AI, whether it's robotics. People need to understand how to work in those worlds because it's what all of us are doing. I'm sure you guys are doing a lot of it at your place too, Brian. But just working to find ways to really create an environment that people want to live, work, and play downtown because it is an amazing place along the riverfront. So
hopefully the weather will cooperate for the concert tonight.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
Sure. All right, a couple more questions, and then we'll do some Q&A. If we've got anything in the queue, we'll see. But for anybody that wants to jump in here, moving forward, what role do you believe real estate finance will play in sustaining smart growth for Jacksonville? Chris?
Sure, I'll take a crack at that. I mean, that's a broad question, so and we've all sort of addressed it throughout this process. But I'll just cite the example, that Chad brought up was, we were lucky enough to help ViStar move their headquarters downtown and acquire the downtown city block, and my office is directly across the street from it. And what before was several empty office buildings or partially empty buildings is now a vibrant corner with retail, new places to eat. The ViStar employees are out and about. There's music playing from time to time, and it's that is a financial investment by ViStar. Not similar project. That's a very large project that has a very beneficial impact in downtown, and it's really heartening to see ViStar's commitment to revitalizing downtown. You've got dozens of smaller projects going on downtown that are a little bit under the radar in the sense that the big projects get a lot of the press. Everything from the Landing to ViStar to the Loft Apartments downtown to what's going on in Brooklyn. But the city, through the Downtown Investment Authority and other government agencies, has really focused downtown. I think the DIA is headed by Lori Boyer, who has a really strong, sustainable vision for downtown and works extremely hard to make it happen. And if you drill down to what they've got going on, I mean, there are several dozen projects. They're smaller, like revitalizing an old hotel to create a new hotel with retail right in the heart of the downtown district. Again, there's lots of projects that are on the smaller scale, creating loft apartments. There's a fun container project that's since opened, and they're renting apartments made out of steel containers that have been very popular. All of these things bring more folks downtown. This investment brings retail, follows it, and it will also ultimately help Jacksonville's growth, right? If they have growth issues, because as more folks come downtown, you're going to have less congestion in the surrounding suburbs, and you'll have more synergy between the city and the suburbs. Anyway, and so real estate and finance and the financing those and developing the urban core is really just going to be benefiting Jacksonville on a going forward basis. And as Chad mentioned, we have all this waterfront, and with Berkman 2 coming down the other day, you now have a great new huge pad for development. So in short, developing downtown will help the greater Jacksonville area and its suburbs. Back to you.
Yeah, perfect. So we've got just 3 or 4 or 5 minutes. I think we got 4 minutes left. I do not see any questions in the Q&A. So if anybody has a question, you better jump in now. We're going to go to my last question, but then we're going to try and wrap this up in just a second. And look, we've touched on this a good bit, but maybe somebody can kind of put a fine point on it with the last question. But in what ways do you see the region as a collective? When I think about the region, I think, the Northeast Florida region as a collective, building a more resilient and economically viable future for Jacksonville.
I'll take that if you don't mind, Brian.
Perfect, Laura. Yeah.
I definitely believe that the communities are working together well, which really helps. So the economic development teams get together and coordinate and make sure that they're all on the same team for attracting companies that are coming down here, which I think is so key. And it's really just all of the different areas that we have the expertise that we're attracting. I mean, we talked about healthcare, but we've also got all these logistics company, all the financial institutions, education, the financial sector, real estate, and having, the benefit of having the Jaguars here, that makes us a primary market for a lot of the groups out there. And so I think we need to look at it from how everyone works together for that, but also the funding sources that are available to, make this happen. We need to ensure that the Northeast Florida area continues to attract the debt and equity that's coming to this region, because that's allowing this growth to be possible and to tie it all together. And we're lucky to have the local banks and credit unions here to help make that happen. But we also rely heavily on the outside equity that comes in from out of the region to be able to fund all of these projects. And then, as has been mentioned several times, having our military here and the port and all of these different things coming together with our waterfront and the beaches just makes this such a vibrant area that it's no wonder it's not a secret anymore. People come here and they see the potential of where we can grow and what can be done. And I think that we're very fortunate that we have people that are all vested together and want to work together to make this happen. Whereas you go to many other markets and you don't see that collaboration. Back to you, Brennan.
I think I could
Thank you.
jump on to Laura. I
Go ahead,
came
Jeff.
from a couple different states in the past 10 years. And I think the one thing I've seen here is the collaboration and the partnership is unlike anything I've ever seen it in those markets where you've got everyone wanting to work together and everyone truly focused on creating an environment that thrives in the future, whether it's Lori, as Chris mentioned, with DIA, whether it's Jake Gordon with Downtown Vision, whether it's the mayor. I mean, they're all working hand in hand, beating to the same drum with the same vision. And it's really amazing to see. And I think it's our job to continue to support organizations like the Chamber, Downtown Vision, DIA, and attract and do our part to attract new businesses and new investments to the market. And I know when Mayor Curry talked about Nimbus, that was something we were proud of, as we invested 20 million in them as an organization, which then led to them coming downtown. Now they're headquartered in our building with us, bringing over 600 well-paying jobs to the market. And it's things like that where I think as business owners and as organizations, we continue to work hand in hand with the same vision of bringing companies down here and showing off what we have. It benefits us as organizations selfishly, but it's really about the people and creating more jobs for the younger generation that are growing up here too. So.
Perfect. Yes, I'll wrap us up here. We do have, and Mayor Curry said it, a vibrant and engaged business community. There's tremendous optimism in this region. The population growth is tremendous. There's financial support to, grow this community. Obviously, we've got to make sure we're doing it smartly. And look, I really appreciate spending some time with each of you, Laura, Chris, and Chad, this morning. Hopefully, we provided some good insight to the folks that were listening in. But thank you again, and thanks everyone for listening in today. And I think we are streaming live, and it's probably could be replayed at some point. But with that, I'll turn it back to the folks at Capital Analytics.
So if everyone can just hold for 1 second, we're going to take a quick picture. Smile. Perfect. Awesome. So thank you again to Brian, Laura, Chris, and Chad for being with us today and for the excellent discussion and role on the role real estate and finance play for smart growth in Jacksonville. Good morning, everyone. My name is Max Crampton Thomas, and I'm the regional editor here at Capital Analytics, overseeing the South region. It has been a pleasure to work on this year's inaugural edition of the publication and receive the in-depth knowledge and insights from Jacksonville's top public and private leaders. There are so many exciting developments and innovations happening in the region, like the Jacksonville shipyards and like the Jacksonville, excuse me a second, and like the Riverfront Jacksonville projects that we are thrilled to be spotlighting in Invest Jacksonville 2022. Thank you to our audience for answering our first poll. Again, the results will be revealed at the end of the event, so be sure to stick around. The second poll will pop up now, so go ahead and answer. As to, you jump in the car for some fun this weekend. Where are you most likely to end up? While you are answering the poll, as a reminder, all registered attendees today will receive complimentary access to read our Invest Jacksonville 2022 report digitally. Look out for an email that will be sent following this program. Also, we are currently live streaming on our YouTube page, where this event will sit for anyone that would like to revisit it or reshare these great discussions. And now, I would like to introduce our second panel for today's event, Healthcare's Future. Our moderator for this panel is Mike Schumer, Chairman for Medical Life Holdings and CEO of Crucial Care. Mike, if you can go ahead and turn on your camera and your audio. See our people coming in. Hi, hi. Everyone, as you come in, can please turn on your camera and your audio. That would be perfect. Hi, everybody. And just missing Mike. I believe he should be coming right now. This is the wonderful part of Zoom. It's great to see everybody. Mike, if you can go ahead and turn on your camera and your audio, that would be perfect. Really appreciate it. Other panelists, if everyone go ahead and just give me a quick audio check here. I'll just go around the horn.
Good afternoon.
Perfect.
Good afternoon.
Awesome.
Good afternoon.
And Mike, if you can go ahead and just turn on your camera and your audio. Perfect.
Hey, good
Awesome.
afternoon. The invitation
Awesome.
came through.
Great. Mike, I'm going to go ahead and let you take it away here.
Okay, fantastic. Welcome, everybody. I'm very excited about this panel because healthcare is such a big part of our community. In addition to being one of the largest high-paid employers in the community, healthcare is also very personal for all of us. And as the Mayor Curry mentioned, we're very fortunate to have world-class healthcare right here in Jacksonville. So as we get through on this, we're going to have some broad categorizations of our questions for our panelists. We already have a lot of questions. I would encourage everybody in the virtual audience, if you do have more questions, we'll try to get those at the end of our presentation. The reason I'm so excited about this panel is that the three panelists you see here joining me are true leaders of healthcare and education in our community. And I'm going to beg a moment from the audience for me to read the introductions to their bios so you can see how impressive they are. First is Gina Mangus of Flagler Health Plus. Gina serves as Vice President of Strategy and Advancement for Flagler Health Plus. In this role, she is responsible for bringing to life an enterprise-wide strategy to further advance the Flagler Health Plus brand, leverage strategic partnerships, and evolve the way the enterprise engages with healthcare consumers across the region. Welcome, Gina. Our next panelist is Dr. Chris Sapienza. Chris was appointed Provost and Senior Vice President of Academic Affairs in 2018 for Jacksonville University. As the Chief Academic Officer, Dr. Sapienza is responsible for ensuring the quality of undergraduate, graduate, and professional education and enhancing Jacksonville University's function, a very important function, as a prominent, private, and distinguished comprehensive university through excellence in faculty teaching, research, scholarship, and service. Thank you and welcome, Chris. And finally, we have Nicole Thomas of Baptist Health. Nicole Thomas, Fellow of the American College of Healthcare Executives, is Hospital President of Baptist Medical Center, Jacksonville, and she is responsible for operational and strategic direction of the largest hospital in the health system. Ms. Thomas joined Baptist Health in 2011 and in 2016 was named Baptist Health Medical Center South President, becoming the first female and the first African American to lead a hospital in Baptist Health history. Welcome, panelists. I'm honored. And as I mentioned, I'm excited. So our questions that we came in today are in three broad categories. We have those looking to the past, those looking to the present, and those looking to the future. And at the end, we'll get to some questions if we have some from the virtual audience. I'd like to throw out some questions generally for everybody, and maybe we can respond to them in the order in which we were introduced. And we'll start with the first one, looking to the past. As you look to the last few years, what have been your observations about the innovative energy and spirit of Jacksonville in the healthcare and the educational markets? And specifically, what positive takeaways have you seen that have impacted that market? And now to our thought leaders, Gina, if you would lead us off.
Thank you. I imagine our colleague from JU is going to talk about higher education. So maybe I'll focus a little bit on what we've been doing in St. Johns County with the education system as it relates to youth mental health. One thing that we have seen pop up in the last couple of years, as we all know, is a dramatic increase in children experiencing anxiety and depression and mental health concerns. So I think what COVID-19 did for us was help us create some common goals and an ability for us to work jointly with the St. Johns County School District and now Nassau County, Putnam County as well, to introduce a program called Brave, Be Resilient, and Voice Emotions. And so we were able to leverage public and private partnership in a way to increase access to mental health services for students. And before we got started, only 35% of students were actually accessing the mental health that they needed, and we're up above 95% now. So that was an exciting opportunity for us to get in front of some problems and really prevent the higher acuity instances of mental health care when a student would need hospitalization, which we all want to avoid.
Thank you, Gina. Chris, perhaps you have some comments about the question?
Oh, absolutely. Thanks, Mike, and great to be here. When I think about the past of where we were as a city. I think we were operating in silos. Individuals were working on their educational goals. Healthcare industry was working on their goals. And I think it took, maybe exasperated by the pandemic, but I think it's been happening really the last 10 years since I've been here, is that we took a strategy as a private university to really, listen to what the industry leaders needed. So when you talk about education playing a role in workforce development, what is that exactly? I mean, obviously we are in a crisis. Maybe some people would call it a bad crisis. Some people would call it a good crisis because Florida's growing so fast and we want that economic development in Florida. But we collectively, as healthcare industry experts and educational experts, need to work together, no longer in silos, to say, what is it exactly do I need? How many nurses am I short? How are we going to deal with the retirements and the physician shortages? Should we build more nurse practitioners? How can an educational institution become really the underpinning around what might be likened to a teaching hospital, so we can bring innovation in surgical tech programs, pharmacy tech programs? And so I think in the past, we just weren't listening. At least we weren't, as educational institutions, listening. We were really asking healthcare industries to just help us by serving our students in practicum. That doesn't work anymore. We have to be truly collaborative so that we're enriching each other rather than just asking each other to work, for each other and sort of borrow resources. So now we're collaborating. And I'm really excited about what we've been doing with some of our great partners here on the line today and what we're going to develop together in the future.
Thanks, Chris. That was salient. Nicole, any comments for us?
Sure. So great feedback from my co-panelist. When I think about kind of where we've been, it reminds me of the quote, necessity is the mother of invention. And in both of the industries, healthcare and education, what you've heard the team talk about is our agility and our resilience. And we've proven to ourselves that we have the ability to pivot. And I can certainly say for healthcare, we haven't always been at the forefront of doing things new quickly. And we certainly had to move ahead in this period of pandemic. For example, having to move to telehealth visits. We've always had the technology, but we weren't doing it at the 90% rate that we started during the COVID pandemic in 2020. So I would say that our thought process around how to grow has really expanded, not just in bricks and mortar. That won't be our only future, but we'll just continue to expand in the digital space, and we'll see our teams evolve. Those who can work from home will, and some will be hybrid, but we'll continue to adjust. And I love what Chris talked about, collaborate to solve the problems ahead of us.
That's great. So it's very evident to those of us in healthcare and anybody who's engaged the system that it's an interconnected web of resources. So I think it's refreshing and exciting for all of us to see collaboration becoming a priority for all of our organizations. That's great. So perhaps you can look at the landscape, and we'll go to the present and talk about how it impacts the priorities that your organizations have. And again, Gina, I'll ask you to start us off on this round.
Sure. So the present is a unique time for all of us, right? Right now, we touched on the workforce shortage, supply costs are increasing, real estate. We just heard a whole segment about the real estate market and the increasing prices there. So underscoring what Nicole said about, being able to pivot and being agile is critical, and really reevaluating our care delivery models, the places we deliver care, how we deliver care, and to whom. It's changing. We've been talking about change in healthcare for more than a decade, and it is finally here. I know we're going to dive a little more deeply into the transformation of care and some of the additional dialogue, but really it's the ability to be nimble and to collaborate, to think differently, and all of us to leverage our strengths. I used the BRAVE program as an example earlier, and it really came to be the superintendent of schools said, I don't want to be a police officer and I don't want to be a doctor. I'm here to teach. And so how do we all leverage what we do best to work together and solve problems? And I think even when you look at the care model, making sure that every person is working at the top of their license. So we've integrated LPNs into our care model and looking at the way we deliver care differently in an environment where workforce is short and costs are high, and how can we provide more accessible care to our patients as well, and avoiding high cost things like ER visits.
So Gina, it sounds like Flagler Health Plus is busy these days. So Chris, how have your priorities been impacted at Jacksonville University?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I mean, we are extremely growth oriented in our priorities. As the mayor said, just the other day, we announced our College of Law comprehensive. I want people to think of Jacksonville University as a comprehensive educational place and space in our city. So we are reacting and proactively building programs, not only in healthcare, but literally across all of the areas that the previous panel talked about, so that we can be prepared for those cybersecurity specialists, those AI companies that are coming in, those fintech companies, that merger between business and healthcare. And to Gina's point, in healthcare, it's about creating, 500 to 600 nursing graduates for the region at all levels, LPN to doctoral. And also being the ones that are leading the discussion in bringing the first ever potential, College of Medicine to our region. But it's also that factor of upskilling that people forget about, is that, there are people that have to learn new skills that have been working in their job for 10 or 15 years, and we still need to make them viable. So JU's playing a big role in what we developed as the Upskill Institute. And, I say humorously, it's not just about continuing education across the whole spectrums, in terms of teaching folks, how to kayak, but really how to integrate soft skills into people who are trained in AI and in cyber, and managerial skills into nurses, and making sure we really have all of the different, pillars of upskilling that's needed to keep the middle age class of workers relevant. So that I think is, part of the new tomorrow.
That's great, Chris. And I think it's refreshing to hear you focusing holistically on what those of us on the provider side need, specifically relevant to the ever-growing burden of IT and data and cybersecurity as well, too. So Nicole, you want to tell us how Baptist's priorities are being impacted by the present state of the landscape?
Sure. I think Gina hit the nail on the head about making sure that we have what we need inside the walls of the hospital. And Chris talked about making sure we're fostering the entire workforce, including those middle experienced folks, and adding new all the time. I would say that Baptist is looking to make sure our community has a lifetime of health together. That's our vision statement. And while we certainly are excellent at taking care of those who need hospitalization, we're also expanding our focus to those who we can care for to help reduce the burden of chronic disease. So we're moving upstream to think about prevention. So adding a mobile mammography bus, we're going to have a buddy bus going into the community and really helping with screening. We're doing lung cancer screening, colon screenings. We have a partnership with the YMCA Healthy Living Centers. We're really trying to get to where the people are that are actively working to improve their health. We want to be a partner in that. And I would say that literally is where we're headed. Not only are we going to provide the care when folks need us in times of illness or injury, but we're also going to be that partner in maintaining or improving our health outside of that.
Thanks, Nicole. That is not a heavy lift for those of us that have been in healthcare, or it is a heavy lift, I should say, for those of us who have been in healthcare for a while. So I applaud those efforts. And I think the theme that's wonderful and resonating for me is that there's kind of a focus now on the whole patient. So,
And Mike, can I just
Oh,
pick up
please.
on that real quick? Because I
Please.
think, what Nicole's saying is really important, getting to that accessibility, getting to the patient. One of the areas that I think the city can help with, along with our hospital and education institutions, is we often do forget about the caregiver burden. And I think there's going to be a big growth in having to educate what we call patient navigators. Both Baptist and Flagler have that inside of their system. But there's going to be a real, tragedy here in the next, 10 to 15 years if we don't start figuring out how to train caregivers to take care of their patients inside the home. And I think that's an area that we can all come together as a community to begin to help those individuals really holistically be able to care for people as they're aging in place or with disease. And I don't know if my colleagues agree with me, but that's something we've been thinking about here at Jacksonville University is caregiver burden training.
Absolutely. It's going to take us all, right?
Right.
Chris, that's fantastic. And relevant to the previous panel talking about the favorable demographics driving a lot of the real estate growth, those same demographics have an opposite side of the coin in regards to the number of people that are aging into the Medicare age and getting older, which increases the demands for care, both in a facility and in the home as well, too. So I think that's a really salient observation. So we do have a lot of questions. I'm thinking maybe now we'll go to individual questions for you. So we'll start with you, Gina. I'm going to read this off and then we'll get your sage comments. When people talk about healthcare, there's been a long-standing conversation about the shift from volume to value. How does the reimagining of healthcare along these lines lead to better health for whole populations? And what will be some of the new and innovative way care is going to be delivered as that shift continues?
I love talking about value-based care. And Nicole touched on a little bit when she mentioned the chronic disease management and really getting in front of the problem, because really value-based care is about reducing costs, improving quality, and making people healthier. And people often think we're crazy when we as healthcare providers say we really want to keep people out of the hospital, but we do. And that's what value-based care is all about. And in order to achieve that, there's a number of things, like you say, it's a heavy lift to get there. We have to really increase our engagement with people. And we are changing our language. They're not just patients, they're people. We want to engage with people before they're ever a patient. What we had in the past was a typical 4-day hospital stay, or if we're lucky, a once-a-year visit to your doctor. And what we really need is a 365-day-a-year relationship. So where people understand how health and healthcare fit in with their lifestyle. And digital solutions are going to play a huge role in that. We've invested in a technology company and some co-developed and curated some products that really help us stay in tune with people in our community. And we're also leveraging that technology through our social health organization, Care Connect Plus. And depending on the study, you see, social determinants of health like transportation, housing, food adequacy make up 50 to 70% of someone's overall health and well-being. So we are navigating through our community health associates, those folks, to all the services they need that are going to keep them out of the hospital. The people in our housing navigation program, we reduced their ED utilization by 57%. So we're seeing true outcomes in that. And it is all linked to value-based care and how we're looking at the whole person and keeping them well and healthy. So it's a really exciting time. We've been talking about the journey to value for, I think, 15 years now. I do believe it is finally happening. And I think, it's great that we've had time to figure out how to be successful at it. And we are going to build healthier communities and being effective at the value-based model, working with employers as well, bringing together, we've got clinics inside the schools, and we're working with local employers on how we can be more tightly aligned with their insurance products. And so it really is a time of transformation in healthcare right now.
That's great, Gina. And I think that's really of tremendous benefit for our community and the patients as well, too. I've heard that, your health status is roughly 40% impacted by your genetics, 50% by your zip code, which is
Yep.
really a proxy for what you were addressing, what we
Yep.
call in healthcare, those social determinants of health. And that only leaves about 10% for those of us that provide healthcare to have a real favorable impact. So the fact that you're going upstream, as Nicole said, I think it's going to pay really wonderful benefits for everybody in the community. So Chris, let's go for a question for you.
Sure.
Despite the best efforts of higher education, the labor shortage remains a key issue facing healthcare organizations in all of its forms. From your own conversations with students or your colleagues in the higher education and healthcare sectors, what needs to change for the supply to be able to match the demand for healthcare workers? And how is your university helping to work towards solutions?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think nobody would be surprised, to say that higher education, traditionally is a turtle. They're slow in the pace of their growth plan. And if higher education institutions are going to, really make it today and attract the student and retain the student, we have to accelerate the types of programs we're building. Case in point, Baptist Health and Jacksonville University partnered together to do an accelerated 12-month nursing program. What they did is they said, well, let's look at individuals who are intelligent that already hold 4-year degrees in other fields and create a curriculum and a practicum and an immersive learning environment that trains these individuals to be ready to go into the Baptist healthcare system in 12 months with a BSN degree. 12 months, which would traditionally take a 4-year program, at most other universities. And so in that model, now you can take what, would be for a 4-year time span to graduate 50 some odd nursing students and do it in 12 months. And you take that model and you then replicate it, and you do that at Flagler Health, and you do that at Ascension, and you do that at Mayo. And now instead of graduating, 400 students a year, you're graduating thousands. So take that model and take that framework and share it. It should be important to the state of Florida to look at an educational institution like Jacksonville University and say, that's innovative what you did with Baptist, that was innovative what you did with Jacksonville University. Invest in that. Take that framework and help other universities incorporate that model. Not all universities have the resources to do that. So we have to take the good products, if you will, educational products, get the state interested in what they are, and help deliver that framework across all universities, both public and private. That's the only way that you're going to be able to do it. This upskilling that I talked about, rather than driving people towards, Google or Amazon to create educational programs, they need to come out of accredited institutions. Certificate programs, credentials have to come out of accredited institutions, so we have quality control over those programs. And then lastly, we have to go global. We're involved in multiple countries right now, trying to bring international students and create programs where we can immigrate individuals from other low income areas to come into J1 scholar programs that ultimately educate them, upskill them again, nurse ready, medically ready to get into our healthcare systems. And our healthcare systems are really open to that, and they've had great success with those populations coming to the US. So again, it's got to be bullish, it's got to be entrepreneurial, and it's got to be in partnership with our healthcare institutions.
Thank you
That's
for
great.
doing that. Nicole and I are like, yes, yes.
We are
You're welcome.
thrilled.
Well, I can't do it without the two of you great minds.
That's great, Chris. And there's no doubt that both the state and the federal government cast a big shadow on healthcare. And I love how you're sort of leveraging our original theme, which is collaboration is going to be necessary to help us all get through this successfully.
Yeah, I really do. I mean, the mayor's been incredibly supportive and is acknowledging what we're doing here. And I think we've got to get the state to pay attention to the frameworks we're developing. Really do.
It's heading in the right direction, but as you mentioned, sometimes at the pace of a turtle.
Right. No longer can we sustain that pace. It's too idealistic, and we have to create, really strong business strategy models together in healthcare.
Yeah, well, we're grateful for you leading the charge on that, Chris, in a big way. So I think all of us understand that patients come in with different kinds of insurance, and that we already talked a little bit about how their zip code or their social determinants can impact their overall health. And that's why this question for you, Nicole, really resonated with me. As the nation becomes more focused on equitable solutions in healthcare for our diverse population, the efforts to increase access to affordable care have taken center stage, thank goodness. From your perspective, what do you believe are the most viable solutions to increasing access to cost-effective and equitable care for all?
So Mike, if I had the answer to this one, right, we would be in good shape.
You have 5 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. Well, first, let me say, I'll just cut right to the chase and say we have to find a way to support the belief that healthcare is a right and not a privilege. Because access to healthcare is tied to the funding source, right? And the funding source is called insurance. So we've got to figure out how to break through that barrier for those who don't have it. And all of us on this panel are partnering with our local organizations in the community to help bridge the gap. I would say, for example, Volunteers in Medicine, they're doing yeoman's work at taking care of the working uninsured, right? And the state has created a funding source for treatment for when there's a breast cancer diagnosis for the uninsured, and Baptist is a provider to help provide that care. But what I'm telling you is we've got a piecemeal approach, right? Program after program to access isn't getting us to where we need to go as fast as we need to get there. So that's number one. And number two, I would say, just based on everything we've talked about today, including the mayor, we have to continue investing in our underserved communities with access to education. College is not for everybody. So skills training, vocational training, we have to make sure there's food in the community, that there's safety. The mayor talked about septic tanks, right? There's housing, just the basics so that our citizens have a shot at earning a living wage. And that's how you get access to the things that most of us just take for granted. But as Gina said, we know are so impactful on overall health. So it's a big idea, right? And it's going to take all of us to figure out how to solve it. But I'm grateful that the equitable outcomes conversation is on the table. We are looking at our outcomes by race, ethnicity, and language so that we understand what is the issue, where do we have a problem, and how do we fix it? And what we're learning is just what Gina talked about. It is outside the walls of the hospital where we are going to be able to make an impact in helping people be healthier and get to the equitable outcomes that we all are desperately after for our entire community.
That's fantastic. I really appreciate your insights and passion there, Nicole. That's very meaningful to everybody. And I am still hearing echoes of that theme of collaboration from earlier on in almost all of your comments. So I have a few questions here. Maybe we'll switch to the future. And I'm going to read this out, and then maybe Gina, you can start us off with this one. Considering the entirety of the healthcare ecosystem, from providers and payers to the tech and administrative roles around it, where do you see the continued growth of the industry heading in the immediate future?
I know we touched on it a little bit earlier talking about telehealth. We saw the incredible use of telehealth during COVID-19, and although it has declined in recent months, we're still seeing patients utilize telehealth significantly more than they ever did before the pandemic occurred. So technology is going to continue to play a huge role in the evolution of healthcare. I touched on it too a little earlier with patient engagement and you know, the little nudges and reminders that we can send out to people. You know, there's technology we can use. For example, if I am a person who's trying to quit smoking, and every time I pull into a gas station, that's one of my triggers, right? We can send you a nudge using location settings right then. Here's a reminder from our quit smoking program. So there's just so many ways that we can communicate and move healthcare forward with consumers in the market and get in front of some of these problems. I also think, there's predictive healthcare, there's AI, there's so much coming that we're going to see, I think, happen really, really quickly. All of these things are good for payers because they reduce the costs for them. Utilization is a cost for them. And so they're very invested in becoming partners on using technologies and addressing social determinants also. So I think every aspect of the industry is going to continue to work together more tightly and really leverage innovation to solve problems is what we're going to see, and make people healthier, which is what we all want to do.
That's great. So the sands in our hourglass are starting to wind down. So before we hand the microphone to Chris and Nicole for that question, perhaps Gina, you want to say anything as a final going away statement?
Well, no, just thank you for the opportunity. I think it's evident just on the dialogue we've had today, the important role that education plays in the healthcare system, and the important role that we as healthcare providers play in communities. As we mentioned earlier, we're the largest employers in our communities. There's so much that we are responsible and accountable for, and we really are at Flagler committed to advancing physical, social, and economic health of the communities that we serve.
That's great. Thank you, Gina. Chris?
I think, to Gina's point, technologies certainly drive where education is going. Pandemic accelerated our use and having to flip completely to a distance learning model. I'm not the one that's going to say that bricks and mortar are going to go away in education. There's a place and space for that type of living and learning environment. I would hate to see us all move, completely to a distance learning way of educating. Experiences is key. Internships are key. What I do want to go away from is the old, projector transparency, teacher up front, student listening. It's got to be completely immersive. In healthcare, we're finding that virtual reality, immersive learning, simulation training, boots on the ground, hands in, using big data sets to solve problems. Again, working with our industry partners. The students of today get bored easily, and they want to be right where the industry is right now. So we're going to keep up with these accelerated and upskilling programs. We're going to use technology where it makes sense. And we're going to, as I said at the beginning, keep listening to industry. JU and most private universities can be agile, nimble. They can bring things to the forefront very quickly, but with high quality with partners like Baptist and Flagler and others. So we're going to continue to do that for our region.
Thanks, Chris. That's great. Nicole, would you like to bring us to the finish line?
Sure. Thanks so much. It's been an absolute honor to be on the panel with you ladies. And thanks, Mike, for facilitating in such a excellent way. So what I'd say, I'm just adding, piggybacking on what the others have already said, in addition to kind of the big data and what have you, I would say interoperability. Shared data, no matter where you need it, it shows up and it's in your smartphone, right? Patients have access to it. Think about your medical records being on your smartphone. And Baptist is doing its level best to keep up with that trend. It is a place where healthcare has lagged behind traditionally. And so we're moving fast into our digital space, creating the Baptist Access app that can provide GPS directions and get online appointments scheduled and have virtual visits, right? So we want all of that, including your medical record, to be on your smartphone. I also see healthcare becoming more personalized. So precision health is advancing. It's happening today in our oncology space when you think about how we utilize DNA to help determine which treatments are more effective. And so think of that extending into confirming which medications we should take based on our DNA, right? Helping us more effectively manage chronic disease. So we're excited about what technology is going to continue to infuse. It helps us leverage the clinical expertise that is rich in this community, and we're grateful for that. And I'll stop there.
Oh, that's great. So Gina, Chris, and Nicole, thank you very much. I thought it was incredibly engaging and we learned a lot together. I want to thank all three of you as a powerhouse panel for helping us and marshaling healthcare in our community. I'll close with sort of 4 themes that I thought I heard. I think that we all would agree that healthcare is evolving. We're going to have to leverage innovation to be successful during that transition. Again, one of the echoes I heard throughout the conversation was that collaboration has picked up and needs to continue in that direction. And then most importantly, which really warmed my heart, is the focus on the whole patient and Chris, the caregivers supplying that care. And I appreciate all of you for embracing those challenges and what's best for our community. So with that, we'll end our panel and thank you, everybody.
If you could all
Thank you,
just
Mike.
hold and smile for a photo, please. Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for being with us for that great discussion. I really appreciate your time today. Thank you to all of our speakers and panelists who joined us here for today's event. We're so appreciative to have such an incredible group participate today in our first annual Invest Jacksonville Leadership Summit. Now, I'll take a moment to share the results of today's polls. The first poll: aside from increasing revenues and profits, what is the top priority for your organization in 2022? At number 1, at 49%, was updating operating systems and increasing productivity. Our second poll was, you jump in the car for some fun this weekend, where are you most likely to end up? Overwhelmingly, at 62%, was the beach. I hope everyone gets to do that this weekend. I want to thank everyone who shared their thoughts for today's polls, and again, for being here with us today. Thanks to our incredible partners and sponsors for their support in making today possible. Our gold sponsors, again, Flagler Health, Franklin Street, Medical Life Holdings, Crucial Care, and our honored partners, Jack's Chamber of Commerce, St. John's Chamber of Commerce, and the Chamber, Nassau County. As a reminder, our team will be sharing the link following today's conference so everyone will have access to the digital edition of our publication. We are also close to finalizing our 2nd and 4th editions respectively of Invest Orlando and Invest Tampa Bay. If you know someone who would like to be interviewed for one of those reports, please reach out to me at jmiller@capitalaa.com. While this year's Jacksonville's publication might be complete, we at Capital Analytics continue to expand our reach year after year. Stay tuned for more news and updates on this and other markets we cover by registering for our newsletters at www.capitalanalyticsassociates.com or by writing to contact@capitalaa.com. Thank you again for joining us today, to our virtual attendees, to our sponsors and participants, and to everyone that contributed in making Invest Jacksonville 2022 such a tremendous success. Thank you and take care.